If you ever want to know if your wife's cheating, just watch how she kisses you before a work trip. Mine barely aimed for my cheek last Tuesday morning, her lips hitting air while her mind was already somewhere else entirely. I'm Jack Halperin, 44 years old, and I've been married to Elena for 12 years. 12 years of her climbing social ladders I never knew existed. 12 years of her apologizing for my humble origins at dinner parties, and 12 years of pretending I didn't notice how she flinched whenever someone mentioned my family's blue-collar roots. The irony would be hilarious if it weren't so pathetic. See, Elena thinks my family is poor, dead broke. She's told me countless times how embarrassed she is by my cousin Tommy's construction business, my aunt's diner, my uncle's auto shop. Last Christmas, she actually said the words that still echo in my head. I'll never forgive your family for being poor, Jack. Never. What Elena doesn't know is that my family owns half the commercial real estate in our little New England town. The construction business? Tommy builds million-dollar homes. The diner? It's a front for a catering empire. The auto shop? Classic car restoration for celebrities. We're worth about $15 million, collectively, but we've never flaunted it. We wanted to see what kind of person Elena really was. She failed the test spectacularly, but I kept quiet. Love makes you stupid sometimes. This morning, though, everything changed. Elena left for her client retreat at Lake Winnipesaukee, kissing the air near my cheek and telling me not to wait up. 20 minutes later, I found her backup phone in the kitchen drawer, the one she thought she'd hidden so well. The text messages painted a crystal-clear picture. Derek. Can't wait for tonight. Brought champagne. Elena. Jack's so clueless. He actually believes I'm working. Derek. When are you going to leave him? Elena. Soon. Just need to figure out the finances first. I sat in my kitchen, reading through months of messages, watching my marriage dissolve in real time. Derek Foster, her creative director at the advertising agency, married with 2 kids, drives a BMW he can't afford and wears suits that cost more than most people's rent. The Find My Phone app showed Elena's location, the Riverside Lodge, a fancy lakeside resort about 2 hours north. Not exactly a place for client meetings. I called Tommy. Hey, cousin. Want to take a little road trip? Tommy picked me up in his work truck, a beat-up Ford that hides a custom engine worth more than Derek's BMW. My cousin spent 8 years in the Marines before coming home to run the family construction business. He's the kind of guy you want beside you when things get messy. You sure about this, Jack? He asked as we drove through the winding mountain roads toward the lake. I need to know for certain, I said, adjusting the camera I'd brought along. And I need them to know that I know. And then what? I smiled, feeling something dark and satisfied uncurling in my chest. Then we see how much Elena really values her precious reputation. The Riverside Lodge sat on a pristine lake surrounded by pine trees. Expensive cars filled the parking lot, Mercedes, Audis, and yes, Derek's silver BMW with the vanity plates reading CREATIVE. We parked a quarter-mile away and hiked through the woods. The lodge's outdoor hot tub area was lit up like a stage, and there they were, Elena and Derek, champagne glasses in hand, her laugh carrying across the water like broken glass. I started recording. God, Jack is so boring. Elena's voice came through clearly on the video. He doesn't understand ambition, doesn't understand success. His whole family is just small. Derek's response made my blood boil. Well, you won't have to deal with them much longer. Once we're together, we can move somewhere with better people. I got 15 minutes of footage, them kissing, her complaining about our marriage, him promising her a better life. Then Tommy and I crept back to the parking lot. What now? Tommy whispered. I pulled out my pocket knife and approached Derek's BMW. Now we leave them a message they'll never forget. I didn't slash his tires. Too obvious, too criminal. Instead, I loosened the valve stems just enough to create slow leaks. By morning, he'd have 4 flat tires and no idea why. Then I opened a can of sardines I'd brought from home and smeared the oil under his door handles and across his windshield wipers. The final touch was Elena's wedding photo, which I'd grabbed from her dresser that morning. I tore it in half, keeping my side and taping her half to his windshield with a note. Hope the view was worth it. Your loving husband. As we drove home, I sent Elena a text from an anonymous number. Beautiful night at the lake. Say hi to Derek for me. My phone rang 30 seconds later. Elena burst through our front door at 3 a.m, her face flushed with rage and panic. She found me sitting in the living room, sipping coffee and reading a book like nothing had happened. Jack, we need to talk. Do we? I didn't look up from my book. How was your client retreat? Get a lot of work done? Her face went pale. Someone's been following me. Someone knows about Derek? I finally looked at her, watching her world crumble in real time. About your little lakeside getaway? About how boring and small your husband is? Elena collapsed into the chair across from me. Jack, I can explain. Can you? Can you explain 12 years of marriage? Can you explain why my family isn't good enough for you? Can you explain why you've been planning to leave me while spending my money and living in my house? Your money? She laughed bitterly. What money, Jack? You manage a small accounting firm. You drive a 10-year-old Honda. Your family works with their hands. I smiled, pulling out my phone. Elena, there's something you should know about my family. I showed her the property records I'd pulled up. Dozens of commercial buildings, 3 restaurants, a construction company with 50 employees, and a classic car restoration business that had worked on vehicles for 2 Hollywood A-listers. We're worth about $15 million, I said casually. We just don't feel the need to advertise it. Unlike some people. The color drained from her face completely. That's impossible. Your precious Derek's company, Foster and Associates? They rent their office space from my Uncle Pete. That fancy restaurant where you had your first date? My Aunt Marie owns it. The construction company building those luxury condos downtown? That's Tommy's operation. Elena stared at the documents on my phone, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. We wanted to see what kind of person you really were, I continued. We wanted to know if you'd love me for me, or if you were just another gold digger. Congratulations, Elena. You failed the test. She stood up shakily. Jack, please, we can work this out. I made a mistake, but nothing. I stood up too, suddenly feeling 10 feet tall. You want to know what happens now? Derek's about to lose his biggest client. Foster and Associates rents from my family, and their lease is up for renewal next month. Guess who's not getting renewed? You can't do that. I can, and I will. But that's just the beginning. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. Derek's car is getting towed. Sardine oil worked perfectly. Tow truck driver says it smells like a fish market exploded. I showed Elena the text. Your boyfriend's having a rough morning. 4 flat tires, car smells like rotten fish, and now he's stranded at a resort he can't afford. Elena's anger flared back to life. You're pathetic, Jack. Absolutely pathetic. You think money makes you better than Derek? He has class, sophistication, culture. He has debt, a failing business, and a wife who's about to find out where he really was last night. Her face went white again. You wouldn't. I already did. I sent Mrs. Foster a lovely video this morning. Nothing inappropriate. Just her husband toasting his future with my wife while discussing how they're going to start their new life together. Elena lunged for my phone, but I stepped back easily. It's too late, Elena. The video is already sent, the evidence is already gathered, and your reputation is already destroyed. My reputation? What about yours? What happens when people find out you're vindictive and cruel? I laughed, actually laughed. Elena, you've spent 12 years telling everyone in town how poor and pathetic my family is. You've made jokes about us at dinner parties, rolled your eyes when I mentioned family gatherings, and literally told me you'd never forgive us for our background. Now everyone's going to find out the truth, that you're a cheating gold digger who was too stupid to recognize real wealth when it was right in front of you. She tried one last desperate play. Jack, please. I love you. Derek means nothing to me. It was just a mistake, a moment of weakness. Save it for someone who cares. Elena stared at me for a long moment, then grabbed her purse and headed for the door. This isn't over, Jack. I'll take you for everything you're worth in the divorce. Good luck with that. Check your prenup, the one you signed because you thought I had nothing worth protecting. The door slammed behind her, and I poured myself another cup of coffee. By noon, the whole town was buzzing. Derek's wife had filed for divorce and posted Elena's video on Facebook with the caption, "When you find out where your husband really goes on business trips." The post had 300 shares within 2 hours. Elena's best friend Vivian called me around 1 o'clock. Jack? It's Vivian. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I had no idea Elena was doing this to you. Thanks, Vivian. I appreciate that. And Jack? I also had no idea about your family's situation. Elena always said you were struggling financially. Elena says a lot of things that aren't true. There was a pause. She's been calling me all morning, crying, asking me to help her. She wants me to convince people that you're abusing her, that you're controlling and manipulative. My grip tightened on the phone. And what did you tell her? I told her I've known you for 12 years, and you're one of the kindest, most patient men I've ever met. I told her that if she wanted to destroy her marriage for a man like Derek Foster, that was her choice, but she wasn't going to destroy your reputation with lies. Thank you, Vivian. That means more than you know. There's something else, Jack. Elena asked me to lie for her, to say I saw you with another woman. She wanted me to help her frame you for cheating. My blood went cold. And I recorded the conversation. I thought you should know what kind of person you're really dealing with. After Vivian hung up, I sat in my kitchen, staring at the phone. Elena wasn't just a cheater. She was actively trying to destroy me. The woman I'd loved for 12 years was willing to lie, manipulate, and scheme to get what she wanted. That's when I decided Elena needed to learn what real consequences looked like. The town's fall festival was that weekend, the biggest social event of the year. Everyone would be there: families, local business owners, politicians, and most importantly, Elena's social circle. The people whose opinions she valued more than her own marriage. I spent Friday making phone calls. By Saturday morning, everything was in place. Elena showed up to the festival looking desperate but defiant. Derek nowhere to be seen. She'd clearly spent the morning trying to repair her image, wearing her most expensive dress and forcing smiles at everyone she passed. I watched from the dunking booth where Tommy was volunteering, waiting for the perfect moment. At 2 o'clock, the festival organizers announced the annual Community Recognition Ceremony, where local business leaders were honored for their contributions to the town. This year, they were adding a special segment about hidden community pillars, families who contributed quietly without seeking recognition. I'd made a generous donation to ensure the Halpern family was featured prominently. Elena was standing near the main stage when the presentation began. I watched her face as the announcer began listing my family's contributions to the community. Tommy's construction company employing 60 local workers, Aunt Marie's catering business feeding half the town's events, Uncle Pete's property management, keeping downtown vibrant and affordable. The Halperin family has been the backbone of our community for 3 generations, the announcer continued. Their combined businesses generate over $12 million in local economic activity annually, and their charitable contributions have supported our schools, our veterans programs, and our community center renovations. Elena's face was a mask of horror and humiliation as everyone around her began pointing and whispering. These were the same people she'd made snide comments to about my poor family, the same social circle she'd tried to impress by distancing herself from my relatives. But I wasn't done yet. The announcer continued. We'd also like to recognize Jack Halperin, who quietly manages the family's investment portfolio and has personally donated over $200,000 to local charities over the past 5 years. Jack, could you come up to the stage? As I walked toward the platform, I passed Elena. Her face was red with embarrassment and rage, tears streaming down her cheeks as her carefully constructed social world collapsed around her. You planned this, she hissed as I walked by. I learned from the best, I replied without stopping. From the stage, I could see Derek lurking at the edge of the crowd, looking like a man who'd lost everything, which, thanks to his wife's divorce filing and his company's impending eviction, he pretty much had. I took the microphone and looked out at the crowd, my eyes finding Elena's. Thank you all for this recognition, I said. My family has always believed that true wealth isn't about what you have. It's about what you give back to your community. We've also always believed that the measure of a person isn't their bank account, but their character, their loyalty, and their integrity. The crowd applauded, but I wasn't finished. Some people spend their lives chasing status and wealth, never realizing that the most valuable things in life can't be bought or sold. They can't be faked or stolen. They have to be earned through years of consistent, honest behavior. Elena was pushing through the crowd, trying to escape, but people kept stopping her, asking questions, making comments. There was nowhere for her to hide. The past week has taught me that some people will never understand the difference between having money and having worth, and that's their loss, not ours. I handed back the microphone and walked off the stage, feeling lighter than I had in years. Elena left town that Sunday. No goodbye, no final confrontation, just packed her things while I was at Tommy's house and disappeared. She left behind her wedding ring, her credit cards, and a note that simply said, "You win." Derek lasted another month before his business collapsed completely. Foster and Associates closed its doors in November, and Derek moved back to Boston to work for his brother's insurance company. His wife got the house, the kids, and most of his assets in the divorce. Vivian stopped by the following spring to check on me. We sat on my back porch, drinking lemonade and watching the sunset. Do you ever regret it? She asked. The way everything went down? I thought about it for a moment. I regret that it had to happen at all. I regret that the woman I loved for 12 years turned out to be someone I didn't know. But do I regret exposing the truth? Number. Elena made her choices, and choices have consequences. She called me last month, Vivian said quietly. She's working at a small marketing firm in Portland, living in a studio apartment. She asked if I thought you'd ever forgive her. What did you tell her? I told her that forgiveness isn't something you can ask for. It's something you have to earn. And she burned that bridge a long time ago. I nodded, watching the last light fade from the sky. Elena wanted everything: money, status, excitement, passion. She wanted a life that looked perfect from the outside. What she never understood is that the best things in life are the ones that don't need to be proven or displayed or earned through manipulation. And Derek? Derek got exactly what he deserved. He wanted a woman who would leave her husband for him. Well, he got her, and then he got to see what happens when someone with no loyalty decides you're no longer useful. Vivian laughed softly. You know, Jack, I always thought you were too good for Elena. Even before all this happened, I could see how she looked down on you, how she was always trying to change you into someone else. I know. I think I always knew, deep down. But sometimes you love someone so much that you're willing to pretend not to see their flaws, until those flaws become so big, they're impossible to ignore. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the evening sounds of our small town, kids playing in nearby yards, dogs barking, the distant sound of Tommy's crew finishing up, work on a new house down the street. So what's next for you? Vivian asked. I smiled, feeling genuinely content for the first time in years. Next, I'm going to keep doing what I've always done, taking care of my family, contributing to my community, and living my life on my own terms. The difference is, now I don't have to apologize for who I am or where I come from. And if Elena ever comes back? I looked at Vivian seriously. Elena made her choice when she decided that Derek Foster was worth more than 12 years of marriage. She made her choice when she decided to try to frame me as abusive to cover up her own betrayal. She made her choice when she looked down on my family for 12 years while taking our money and living in our house. Some choices can't be undone, Vivian. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. As Vivian drove away, I stayed on the porch, thinking about everything that had happened. Elena had wanted to test me, to see how much I'd tolerate, how far she could push, how much she could get away with. What she didn't realize was that my family had been testing her all along. She failed spectacularly, and in the end, she got exactly what she'd always claimed to want: freedom from my poor family and our small lives. The irony was perfect. Elena had spent 12 years trying to escape what she thought was poverty, only to discover she'd been living in wealth the entire time. By the time she realized her mistake, she'd thrown it all away for a man who had nothing to offer but debt and empty promises. Sometimes the best revenge isn't something you plan or execute. It's simply letting people face the natural consequences of their own choices. Elena chose Derek over our marriage. She chose lies over truth. She chose status over substance. And in the end, she chose to leave with nothing rather than face the reality of what she'd lost. As I locked up the house and headed to bed, I realized that for the first time in years, I was genuinely excited about the future. Not because I'd gotten revenge on Elena, but because I was finally free to be myself, flaws and all, without having to apologize for it. Elena had taught me one valuable lesson: the people who truly matter will love you for who you are, not for who they want you to become. Everyone else is just passing through. And sometimes letting them pass is the kindest thing you can do, for them and for yourself.